Okay, good. So we're gonna start and we're waiting for a few more people to join us, both online and perhaps one of our interns is also gonna join us, but I'm gonna go ahead and introduce myself. I know I have met and spoken to some of you. My name is Beatrice and I'm an alumna of Bennington. I graduated in 2016 and I'm currently working in admissions as one of the international admissions counselor. I collaborate a lot with Dory, and I know that Dory is a name that rings pretty familiar to a lot of you. And I'm going to let Nam introduce herself.
Hi everyone, my name is Nam. I'm an international student here, and this is my last term at Bennington. Anything else?
Yeah, what are you studying?
Here I study digital media, public action, and Spanish.
Great. So if you have any trouble throughout the webinar, there is a chat, like a little in web conferencing chat that you can use. So if you have any trouble, you can type it in. Right now I have all of you muted so that the noise from microphones doesn't interfere with what we're doing. But yeah, if you have any trouble or you can't hear us at any point, just type something and let us know, and like we can pause and address the issue. So thank you so much for submitting all the questions that you submitted. We have about 15 students joining us today in total, which is pretty exciting. So we're gonna pretty much go through the list of questions and try to answer as many as we can in the time that we have. And if there is time and you have more questions, we can definitely open it up so that you guys can ask more questions. And I'm gonna have Nam talk for the most part, just because Nam is a current student and she has gone through the whole. Oh, here's Ayush. Hi. Here, join us. And I'm gonna have you introduce yourself. Here. All right. So we have another intern joining us. Ayush, do you want to quickly introduce yourself? Say what you're studying and just a little bit about you, and that's the microphone.
Sure. So I'm Marius. I'm a senior. I study computer science and economics, focusing on artificial intelligence and how I can use that for poverty mapping. One of the projects that I'm doing currently is looking at satellite images to map out poverty in South Asia, especially Bangladesh. And I'm an admissions intern.
Great.
Did you hear him clearly?
Nod. Yes.
Yeah?
Yes, I can
Okay,
see all the
okay.
nods. Okay.
Okay, cool.
Great. So let's start with some of the questions that were submitted, and I guess I'll have you guys go back and forth and answer some of these. So one of the first questions that was submitted was, what sort of challenges did you face when you were designing your plan of studies, and how did you overcome them? Also, what do you suggest new students should do to prepare in advance for the plan?
That's a great question. Okay, so I can start. I guess it's a living process. It's so it continues. It doesn't just stop at some point after your plan is approved. The first time I proposed my plan, it wasn't approved at all, and it was deferred because my plan committee said that it was too broad. So what I did was I did my second fieldwork term in New York City. I was working with this organization called Blue Engine in education. And I did a lot of communication stuff with them. And then I had a lot of time to reflect in New York City then. So when I came back in the spring, I revised my plan again. I had another plan meeting and then it was approved. But I didn't really, I mean, I give it a little tweak once in a while, and until my, this year, my senior year, I still gave, final touches at the beginning of the year, because I realized that I was only able to understand fully and own my plan after I studied abroad in Argentina. So obviously it's a constant process in which you reflect upon your interests, your personalities, and your visions for not only your Bennington education, but also the further learning trajectory as well. Yeah, I mean, advice for incoming students in terms of a plan is keep an open mind. I thought I was gonna do anthropology and sociology at the beginning, but I didn't end up doing that. So be welcome to any opportunities that might come your way, and then know that whatever happens, you will always end up with something that you can be proud of.
Yeah, like Nam said, it's kind of like very flexible in terms of once you have your first plan meeting. I had similar kind of experiences with the plan where I had a broad idea of what I wanted to do. Like it would have combined economics and computer science, but I didn't really know like a specific thing that I wanted to look at. And it kind of evolved in a way, and like as you go through and take different classes, I think you get different ideas. And like after that first plan meeting, when you like your junior year, I think that was very important for me because like I took some classes in econ and computer science, and that gave me a little bit of an idea of what I really wanted to do as my senior project. And I think one of the good things is having your plan committee and advisors constantly in touch. So that really helps you when you're talking about what you wanted to do for your senior work, or like how you want to proceed and what sort of classes you should be taking. So one advice I would give is don't really stress out, because like people are always like, like plan meeting is very stressful and things, but it's not really. I mean, if you have an idea, at least a vague idea of what you want to do, I think you'll be fine. Yeah, you can, and the advisors and plan committee is there to help. So I think if you go along that way, I think it'll be fine.
Yeah. Also, just to add another thing is, you might have to explain this to people outside of Bennington or your family about what the plan is. And it was definitely very challenging at first, but it was also very fun because you kind of pitch it in different ways. At least in my case, I, developed this new language to talk about the plan with people outside of Bennington.
Mm-hmm. Good. Yeah. And I think, Nam and Ayush were very clear on this. You can come into Bennington sort of at any point of your progress in figuring out what you want to study. When I arrived as a first year at Bennington, which was now almost 6 years ago, I wanted to study everything, right? I wanted to study anthropology, I wanted to study politics, I wanted to study philosophy, I wanted to study photography, and I wanted to study Mandarin. And you kind of just have to go through the process. And I should say the reason why I wanted to study all those things is that I didn't have the chance to study them in high school. And so you kind of have to go through the process of trying out a bunch of different things and see how they feel for you, see if you're actually interested in them, and see if that's something that you would like to pursue further. So I think for a lot of you, some of the initial steps you're going to be taking at Bennington is really exploring things that maybe you didn't have the chance to do in high school. So take your time with that. It's really important to be flexible, as Nam said, and to take your time in that exploration period, because that's really going to help inform how you're going to move forward and the kind of disciplines that you're going to end up focusing in, or the kind of questions that you're going to end up focusing in. So do take your time with that. So the next question that was submitted asked, what are the types of things that students can do in their free time and during the weekends, both on campus and off campus? So what's there to do at Bennington?
Yeah, I can go. So I think there are a lot of things happening during the weekends. Like you could choose to stay on campus, and like most of the clubs meet on weekends, or like both sports or non-sports club. So if it's a bright sunny day, like you can just go out and like play some sports. Or if it's like winter, then you can probably go skiing. I've never tried it, but that's a good thing to do. Also, like hiking around here is pretty popular. There are like some really nice hiking routes that you can find around here. One of them, like I recently went, was Mount Equinox, which was the tallest mountain in Bennington County. It's a pretty good hike. Other than that, I think a lot of students go to the town, hang out with their friends. I usually go to Williamstown because like they have pretty good restaurants over there. People also go to New York City, which is like 3.5 hours away, or Boston, which is also pretty close. So there are a lot of different things that you can do.
Yeah. I also have a lot of dinners and cookouts with my friends. When it's nice out, you can have barbecue. and a lot of people kind of just hang hammocks outside of their houses so they can stay in the sun and, you know, sunbathe. What else did I do? I mean, if you have friends who have cars, it will be fun to go elsewhere to another cities or towns, like I was just saying. What was it? The one close, Brattleboro.
Yeah, bro.
Yeah, and then Williamstown, of course, Burlington. Yeah, or you can always go to the sauna in the gym. That's what I have been doing a lot. And there's also a rec center in Bennington town. You can always go for brunch or coffee in town. It's pretty small, so there's not a whole lot happening all the time, but there are some cool places that you can check out.
Yeah, a lot of museums nearby.
Yeah.
That's a real big thing. You can also go to museums, and they are free for students. So.
That's awesome.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, other things that you might want to keep in mind is that there are a lot of other colleges that surround us. So in general, this area is a very sort of like, it's almost like a big college area. So you have, for example, Williams College, which is 20 minutes away from us. Smith, Hampshire, UMass, and a few others that are about 2 hours away from us. Middlebury College is only 2 hours north from us. Dartmouth, Skidmore, these are all colleges that are really, really close to us. So you're gonna see a variety of students coming into Bennington from these colleges, but you also may have the opportunity to maybe go to some other colleges and interact with other sort of college scenes around the area. I do think that, you know, between the amount of work that you're going to have to do and maybe the clubs and organizations that you're going to be a part of and the events that are going to happen on campus and off campus, you're going to be pretty busy throughout your semesters. I sometimes when I'm interviewing students or talking to students, one of their biggest concerns is, am I going to be bored at Bennington? No. You're not going to be bored. There is plenty here to do. And did we talk about Sunfest and Harvest Festival?
No.
Should we talk about them?
Sure.
Yes.
So Sunfest is an event we have in May when the sun comes out, when spring is here. It's pretty fun because we have different bands coming to perform on campus and different activities from watercolor painting, henna tattoos, apple cider press. What are some of the other activities?
What do they call the soccer with those
the balls, right?
Yeah, that's
cool. Yeah.
Yeah, we also celebrate Holi, which is the festival of colors, and during our Sunfest, which is also fun. So there's usually a Bollywood flash mob.
Oh yeah,
Bollywood.
I remember that.
And really we also have our intercultural festival. We just had our intercultural festival.
We both performed. It was really fun because you have people from different parts of the world performing some of their, not necessarily their cultural performances, but you know, they sang in different languages, they danced, and someone even read a column from an Indian newspaper. That was really funny.
Yeah. Great. So the next question asks, what is the hardest thing about being an international student at Bennington? How divided is the community between international and non-international students? What is the hardest part?
Hardest.
Or what was the hardest, I guess, maybe even what was the hardest part about transitioning to Bennington? That might help.
Right.
Yeah.
So for me, I didn't experience this culture shock at all. I mean, I didn't have it because, well, first of all, for multiple reasons. First of all, at Bennington, I find people to be very open-minded, and I didn't any have major, difficulties in fitting in at all. However, there are some friction in etiquette. So, for example, people might be colder as strangers, whereas, where I'm from Vietnam, we're pretty warm. So let's say if I want to hug someone and I just want to compliment them on someone, I kind of have to tone it down a little bit at the beginning and find my language around haptics or around the way that I communicate with other people. But then after that, when I understand more the culture here, or I understand more my friends and my friends understand me more, it's easier to communicate with each other and to show affection without feeling like you're being without fearing that other people will misunderstand you. And another thing is, this is completely personal, but everything that I learn here or I experience here, I find it hard to translate into my own language and to communicate with my people back home, because a lot of times the abstract concepts are not available in my language. So it's something very personal, but over time, I think more people are bringing this kind of concepts and this discourse back home. It will be easier to create an intellectual community in wherever you're from.
I mean, I didn't have a lot of problems at first, but like mine was more academic than social. So like I was very used to a competitive environment, and when I took a first math class here, it was like such a collaborative approach. You were supposed to work with your friends and like discuss about it. I was like at first like yeah, it was like so I felt like at first I felt that approach kind of weird, or like had a hard time like just being able to, because like I never had a chance where like it was more of a like discussion based class. You were supposed to listen to people who were talking around you. And I think that big takeaway from this education would be something like being able to listen to people and respond to those things. So at first it was kind of complicated for me just to understand like oh wait, what's happening? But other than that, I think in terms of like social aspect of it, I felt like being in a house community really helped me in terms of like getting that distinction between like a domestic and international. So like I had international friends, but then I was again in my house and I was very close to my house community. So I had like a lot of domestic friends as well. And so it was like a very nice blend of like both the groups of people. And yeah, and I think in general, it just works with every other schools in the US, a lot of paperwork. So
a lot of paperwork. Yeah, for sure.
The first time you have to do taxes, it's like,
oh yeah. Oh, speaking of which, I still have to file my tax. I have to do that right after this. I would add one thing. It's the discourse on gender. First time I came here, I didn't know what pronouns were. So everyone had to kind of talk about their pronouns, which is she, her, or he, him, or they, them. And then I just like, oh, just call me now. And everyone was, no, pronouns. So, it took me a while to kind of feel familiar with that. And people are very open-minded on campus. There is a broad, spectrum of gender and sexuality. So just, prepare that you will be a part of that language.
So we actually got a question in the chat, which I'm going to read out loud and then I'm going to have you guys answered. On the topic of international relationships, how are international students treated by people in Bennington town? So as opposed to students, what is the relationship that you perceived between international students and the people in the town of Bennington? It's a good question.
It's a really good question, yeah. Okay, so I do a lot of work in the community. I'm currently working on a skill sharing project in which I work with older adults and working moms and migrant workers. I would say there are different populations in town, and there is a gap between these populations, which means that the way people perceive international students or people of color might be different among different age groups and backgrounds. In general, people are very friendly. There used to be stereotypes of Bennington students versus people in Bennington town, because people think that Bennington College students are all rich and predominantly white, but that stereotype, I would say that it's not relevant anymore. And so right now there are a lot of activities in town that bring together these different populations and kind of demystify the stereotypes that existed previously. There is a growing creative community in Bennington, and these people are really open-minded. They even speak multiple languages. And as I work with the migrant workers, the Latino migrant workers in Bennington town, they are really wonderful, and they're really welcoming. I would say that sometimes you would run into people that look at you differently, because here it's the population. I mean, 94 or 96% of Bennington town is still Caucasian. But in general, I mean, it's changing, and you can see that very obviously.
I don't have a lot of experience working with the town community, but like whenever I visit towns, they're always like, people are always very inquisitive in terms of understanding culture, and I think it's growing in terms of that also like in terms of how people think about you and like how they are perceiving international students. At first it was kind of weird, or maybe it was just because I felt it was because I was in a new place. I was always like kind of scared and not like willing to talk to people. But as time flew, I was like more confident with like talking to the town people, and I found out that they're really nice. I had like very nice conversations with people in coffee shops or at grocery stores, and they're very mindful and respectful, I think.
I want to add a question, like a follow-up to that. Sometimes, well, actually very often when talking to students while I'm visiting different high schools, one of the biggest questions that comes up is, do you perceive that with the current political climate, do you perceive the Bennington community, so the town, to be a welcoming and safe environment for you? Or was there a shift?
Yeah. So, as you know, in this current socio-political climate, there is a certain level of hostility towards what is perceived as the others, right? And in Bennington town, there's definitely more of this after the recent election. So after Trump was elected, I participated in a march downtown, and we saw that there were a lot of people in the community who came to the march and supported the endeavor that we were doing, but also there were some people who just passed by and kind of honked at us or expressed this kind of grievance towards us. And I think, I mean, it makes sense, right? When this kind of hostility comes out and has a chance to kind of show because of the president or because of these forces that weren't supported as much as before, and now they're visible. However, there is also an opportunity for bridging the gap. There has been so many more initiatives and projects in town that bring people together. For example, there's the International Food Fridays at the Green Table Pop-Up Co-op, and they just have food and people from different cultures to come in and cook together and just have a conversation. And on Bennington campus, we also have a lot of talks and conferences related to these different topics, from environmental issues to immigration to media democracy. And the Bennington town community is welcomed on campus to join these events. I do think that there's so many more things we can do, but at this time, I do feel really excited that when you guys come in, you will feed into this already existing projects and ongoing conversation. And it's really great, especially if you're creative and you want to start something in the community, whether a movie night or a foreign language learning project, whatever it is. And people are welcoming here. Yeah.
So let's move on to an entirely different topic. we had a student asking, well, it wasn't much of a question, more so of wanting to know a little bit more about our dining halls and our dorms. So what is housing and food like at Bennington?
Yeah.
Do you want to
Yeah,
start?
sure. I think both of them are great. Talking about dorms, the rooms are huge compared to.
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, like whenever I'm giving tours and the two families, they're always like, "Wow, this room is big." Like they were talking about how I have a single and their sons or daughters double is smaller than my single. But yeah, they are very nice. I think the main aspect of like Bennington housing is the closed environment, like a closed community between and like how house members interact with each other. Like especially like for me, so we have like three different kind of dorms. One of them is colonial, so it's like very old kind of architecture and has a big common room right in the middle of the house. So that really facilitates kind of like whenever you're walking by, you normally say hi to your friends and you just sit there for some time and start talking. So that I think it really starts a conversation or like mingling with people. So that really helps out. Our house does a lot of house events, and we usually meet outside of like coffee. The coffee hour is the weekly meeting that we have between house members where we talk about house issues and play games and eat food. So beyond that, we also have like other events that are usually happening. So which is fun. Yeah, about that. And they're very clean. What else? There's a kitchen in every house, so you can also like if you feel hungry at 12 in the night, you can prepare food for yourself. Yeah, and talking about dining hall, I think dining hall also does a pretty good job with our food. Like there are a lot of different options. A lot of like international options that like they're always trying new things. And one thing I really liked was like how they are open to suggestions. So we have students give suggestions with writing on napkins and stick on the wall. So there's a whole wall that is devoted for it. So that I think, and they do it like frequently and they look at it and they respond to those suggestions. And the other thing is I remember like there was this, so we had our Diwali, so we gave a recipe to the dining hall staff and they prepared meal for us. And they, whenever like if there's some sort of like an event and we want some special kind of food, like we can always take an initiative and talk to them and they usually come up with pretty good food.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you have a different experience with housing because you live in not sort of like the regular houses.
Yeah. So I lived in a 70s house for 3 years, and then I moved to an independent house on campus called Shingled, only for seniors, and there are only 6 of us. I would say that you have the option to live off campus in a very intentional house community. For example, the townhouse, they cook together and they do different activities together, and they kind of carpool to campus. It's actually pretty close, about 5-minute drive. And living in Shingle, it's a very different environment because people are very intentional. We talk about our needs, and we don't necessarily do a whole ton of activities together, but we're very caring. It's big. You have your own room, and we have 3 different living rooms, which is super nice. So we can host parties and events for other people, and we have a front porch where you can have a barbecue when it's nice out, or bonfire. In terms of food, I would say I definitely missed food from home a lot, even though I find the food here to be pretty good. But once in a while, I would get together with the Vietnamese students and we cook something. We don't really do it as much anymore because we're all seniors, but you can definitely do that with your friends here. Or I actually hang out a lot with the Latino community here, so we cook a bunch of different things together, like arepas or empanadas. Yeah, people also bring food from home and they share that with you. Or when someone traveled to China, they brought back a bunch of snacks yeah, it was super, super nice.
Yeah.
I don't usually share food when I it's just for me.
We also, I don't know, but do you still do the potlucks for international students?
I don't think it happened this term.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's too bad.
Yeah,
We should
I think
bring that
yeah,
Yeah.
to start doing that.
So just to clarify a little bit, as you come to campus, as a student, you're guaranteed housing for 4 years. And as you come in as a first year, you're going to be inserted in like our more traditional houses. So you're housed with 30 other students. And there's no division between years. So you're going to be living immediately with first years all the way through like seniors. All houses are co-ed. And for the first 3 years, you're typically going to have a roommate. And then in your senior year, you're likely to have a single room. As you get to your sophomore, junior, and senior year, your opportunity to move to different types of housing is going to expand. So as Nam was mentioning, there are these kinds of independent houses, and all that means is that those are still houses that are owned by the college, and you're still going to live with Bennington College students, but you're going to be able to do that by living off campus, or a 5-minute, 10-minute walk to campus. And the other big part of that is that if you don't want to be on the meal plan anymore, so if you don't want to eat at the dining hall anymore, you do have the opportunity to cook for yourself. All these houses do have kitchens, and they have pretty spacious kitchens. And because you're only sharing the environment with like 6 people or 5 people, you really have the opportunity to cook for yourself, which is very nice, especially as you get to your junior, senior year. Being able to do that might make the difference. So just to clarify sort of like what the options are for you. Did we want to add anything else about dorms and houses? It's fine.
Yeah, we got a question.
We have a question.
Yeah.
I've heard that freshmen are supposed to fill out a questionnaire to be placed in certain houses. So what are some questions asked on this form, and how are freshmen placed together in houses?
Do you remember?
I do. I remember a little bit about the questionnaire. So when you enroll at Bennington, you get a questionnaire that pretty much asks you about your habits. So what time do you like to wake up typically? What time do you go to bed? What kind of environment do you like? Do you like a quiet environment, a loud environment, a mix of both? So all the questionnaire does is to get a sense of what your habits are and the kind of environment where you're going to be most comfortable. Other questions on the questionnaire will be about your music taste, if you like to listen to music and what kind of music you like to listen to, just getting a sense for like what your taste is, and that's helpful for us to match you with a roommate. So that's pretty much all the questionnaire does, is a way for us to get a sense of who you are as an individual and like what your personal tastes and habits are, and trying to find the best match for a roommate and for housing. Yeah, and obviously you don't have to stick to what your assignments will be. You have a little bit of time at the beginning of your term to switch roommate, or you can always change roommate at the end of term. You can always change house. If most of your friends are living in a different house, you could try and move into that house. So you're gonna have flexibility. You're definitely not tied to the house and the roommate that you're assigned in your first year. So you're gonna have plenty of freedom to move around and exchange your roommate if you don't like them for a better one, whatever you're gonna be most comfortable with. I think ultimately it's about finding an environment where you're gonna feel at home and comfortable, and where you're gonna enjoy the peers that surround you in a way. So a different question is, how are tests and exams at Bennington? Do students have many tests as they do in high school? What do exams look like at Bennington? They're not like exams.
If I had few classes where I had tests and like quizzes, but it's like normal tests. It's not very stressful, and we also have plenty of time. Like for example, for my math classes, we usually have like 4 questions and we have 2 hours. So the pressure, and you're allowed to, like, sometimes the tests are like open book, like in my economics class, it's like you can look at your notes and solve the problems. You can do that as well. But I would say like it's a lot less stressful than what you go through high school.
Yeah.
And if you don't have like tests, if you're not taking like I think language classes also have tests, right?
Yeah, languages have tests, but they're fun to do. because the way that we teach language here is through different themes related to the culture or the politics of the place. So for example, my first Spanish class was I think political ideologies in Spain. And then the second class is about film in Latin America. And the most recent class that I took was women in Latin America. So you have, testing. I mean, in beginning courses, you will have some tests, but then over time, you will just write a lot and give presentations or do different activities like acting or dubbing. I've never taken a serious test with grading, strict grading at Bennington. I did writing in class. One time I did this thing, kind of like the SAT writing session, in which the professor kind of timed you and you had to write something within that amount of time. But then you just have to write a lot of papers depending on what kind of disciplines you study. I did a lot of political science. So I wrote a lot, but mostly 5 to 10 page papers. And I've never written anything like 20 page.
Oh, good. I think one big difference that you're gonna notice, and this is true of Bennington, but this is gonna be true of like just your transition from high school to college in general. The reason why testing is done as often as it is done in high school is because it's an attempt of having you retain as much information as you can from the textbook, right? So there is like constant need for testing so that you're constantly forced to sit down and learn from a textbook. But the way exams and projects are approached in college is so that not only you can learn the content of a specific class, but you're also learning how to develop your own voice and critical thinking in discussing the topics that you're discussing. So I think very rarely you're gonna have to sit down and do a true or false exam. A lot of the tests are gonna take the form of projects, final papers, research papers, case studies. That's true of social sciences. That's also true of languages. That's gonna be true even of like some math classes. Sometimes you don't have to sit down and do a test, but your final project is probably going to be a wider project that might involve you to do some personal research that is outside of the class. What I've noticed at Bennington is that a lot of the classes that you're gonna take are not gonna have set prompts for you. So there's never gonna be a set question that you're gonna have to answer through a final project, but you're going to be very much in charge of determining what the thesis that you want to write about are going to be. And then you're going to have to do research about that and integrate what you're studying in class in your paper. So, in a way, it's teaching you two things, right? It's making sure that you understand the content because you're writing about that content that you discuss in the class, but it's also helping you develop a critical mind about the themes and the topics that you're discussing, which is very, very important. Yeah. Let's see, what other questions? There is a lot of questions. So for the sake of time, I'm trying to prioritize the ones I think you should really, really hear about. How are part-time work opportunities, both on campus and off campus, for international students at Bennington College? It's a good question. Probably on campus.
Yeah, on campus. So with regulations, you can only, as an international student, you can only work on campus. So and you can work 20 hours a week during the term, and during fieldwork term, or if you stay over the summer, it's 40 hours a week. And there are a lot of different offices that hire students. So you can always apply to those positions. They are listed on WorkLink, and also it's just once you get here, you feel you can just go into the office and talk, ask them if they are hiring someone. That process is pretty easy, and I think every international student, I don't think they really had a hard time getting a job on campus.
Yeah, I worked in the dining hall for 2 years. Being a cook helper, so I prepped meals and I cooked meals, and it was really fun. Then I flipped pancakes. That was also really fun. And then I applied to work in admissions. So there are a lot of opportunities on campus, but you have to take initiative. because otherwise, you know, you won't be able to find something right away because it runs out quickly.
Yeah.
In terms of off-campus, you do it through CPT during fieldwork term. So after you're registered, you will be able to work off-campus for 7 weeks. And some of the places even want you to do work longer for them, but you know, it will be something that you have to arrange after. But it's pretty nice. If you have the registration, you shouldn't be worried.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in CPT you can work more than 40 hours, so you can have multiple jobs.
Right.
That's one good thing. And
Yeah.
you get paid overtime.
Yeah. So in terms of on-campus jobs, as Ayush and Na mentioned, there are a lot of opportunities. You can work for the dining hall as a cook helper. You can work in the library. You can work at the gym. You can work in admissions. You can work in a few other administrative offices as interns. So you're going to have a wide variety of options. Some of them, I think, are nice part-time jobs that will look good on a resume. Others are really just, you know, for like getting a little bit extra cash on the side, but you do have a wide variety of options to choose from. In terms of figuring out, another question that was asked was about the challenges that are faced, particularly for the fieldwork term. There are some challenges that pertain to international students, and you touched a little bit on it with the CPT, which is your curricular practical training, as opposed to your OPT, which is your optional practical training. But those are things that your international advisor is going to be able to explain to you with a lot more clarity once you get to campus. Kate Child is your international advisor, and she's going to be able to explain to you exactly what it means to be on an F1 student visa and what all the regulation and limitations are. But really the biggest thing that you can not really worry about, but like that you should know right now, is you're gonna have a little bit extra difficulty with your first fieldwork term, because as a student visa holder, you're not allowed to work and you're not allowed to be compensated for work in the US in the first 9 months of your visa. So what that means is that if you're earning credit for an internship that you're doing, like for the fieldwork term, that would be considered compensation. So that first fieldwork term, you can probably either go to a different country that is not the US to work, or you can move it to the summer. So as opposed to doing your fieldwork term in January and February, you can do it in July and August, or June and July. So there's a few solutions that the fieldwork term office has been able to provide for international students for that first fieldwork term. It doesn't mean you're not going to be able to do the fieldwork term. It just means there is a few extra obstacles in the way, but you're going to be able to complete still 4 fieldwork terms in order to graduate. But again, once you enroll, once you get to campus, Kate Child is going to really be able to explain to you all the nitty-gritty regulations and limitations of your F1 visa. So for now, don't worry too much about it. It's nothing that's going to really affect your time at Bennington, I would say. What do you think? Is that true?
Yeah, I think the Kate Child is amazing in terms of like,
Good.
yeah.
Good. Let's see. We have about 15 more minutes, and I do want to talk about your I-20. I know we've been getting a lot of questions about those, so I'm going to leave a few minutes at the end so I can tell you a little bit about getting your visa to come to campus. So one more question. Let's see. Blah, 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 blah. What is a typical Bennington student? Is there a typical Bennington student? What are the characteristics of a typical Bennington student? Or maybe there isn't a typical Bennington student. Do you think there is a typical Bennington student anymore?
Showering us with that question. We receive this question every single year, multiple times of the year. So my opinion is that there is no typical Bennington student. Maybe there used to be in the past, but I don't think it exists anymore. However, people do perceive Bennington students as a unique type of personality or appearance, and that is not necessarily true, but sometimes maybe like more people might, fit into this category, but I don't think that you should be thinking that way. For the most part, Bennington students are very open-minded. There is a lot of creativity and collaboration on campus, and you perceive this through activities and academics and almost every single aspect of campus. I would say that there are a lot of women on campus. I think the ratio is like 65, 35. No, 65, 45.
65, 35.
35. I can't do math. And yeah, because we are encouraged to study broadly, at least at the beginning. So people are flexible with their studies. When you engage in class discussions, you can find that a lot of people, they speak up in classes, and it's more difficult when you go study with other institutions. Like, for example, during my semester abroad in Argentina, I had some difficulties at the beginning because they were all lecture-based classes and I didn't have a chance to speak. So sometimes I even almost fell asleep in class because I couldn't sit through it. So it definitely has pros and cons. Yeah.
I would also say there is no typical Bennington student. I mean, everyone here has they're studying such a broad range of subjects and have different interests, so it's hard to find there might be cases where there are a lot of students with visual arts, a lot of people taking classes, but I would say the path they choose is so different. Even if someone is doing a similar kind of project, it comes out to be completely different. And yeah, there is a little bit of distinction. I feel when you go to the outer world and you compare kind of Bennington students with non-Bennington students in workplace environment. Yeah. And one thing that I realized over this fieldwork term when I was in LA was we had I felt in terms of skill sets or in terms of understanding things, we had a wide range. Even in my CS classes, I felt we've done so many different things, and as we are very progressive, I think it's progressive in terms of the industry as well. So yeah. So it was kind of I was using tools that a lot of colleges haven't started using it, and everyone was oh, you learned that in college. I was yeah. So I feel that is and it's just and very I think Bennington education makes you very collaborative, and it really works well with working outside of campus or even working on campus, but especially when you're working in teams, I think it really helps out, and we can easily. So one thing I would like to talk about is the a rock star attitude that Andrew was talking about, and I think we kind of are completely different from that, and we are always eager to learn and always asking questions and always wanting to know about things. So I think that was something that I found out when I was working on something.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think the intellectual curiosity is so important at Bennington. I've never been in any other institutions where there's such an obvious sense of intellectually driven individuals, young people who are eager to start something or eager to ask questions. And like Ayush was saying, as you go out and you work in different fields and you interact with other people, you realize that sometimes there's a gap between things that you experience at Bennington and things outside. And it can be challenging for sure, but it also encourages you to find a way to articulate for yourself and stand up for what you believe in.
I'm gonna ask one quick question for see if you can tie this into what we just said. Yeah. We had a student who was concerned that since the plan is such an individualistic thing, the concern was that this would foster an atmosphere that's more focused on the individual rather than a collaborative community. Do you find that to be true?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Super insightful.
I mean, I can talk about my experience with this. Plan is a very individual process, but But one thing that is true while forming a plan or like while doing any kind of work at Bennington is we always tend to look at the problems that surrounds us and try to solve it. So like even it's like kind of individualistic and something that interests you, you're ultimately trying to apply it to a broader community. And that goes out with a lot of like CS classes that I take. Is the first project that the first things that comes in everyone's mind is how can we solve this thing on campus, or how can we solve this kind of things in small towns like Bennington. So I think it goes out beyond like our own interest. Once it forms into a product or research, it goes beyond Bennington. And I think it is not like very individualistic once you get out of here.
Yeah, I definitely think that it's a valid point, because with the approach of the plan, if you approach it in the wrong way, then there's definitely this sense of egoistic individualism. However, the advantage of this, or the good sides of this, is that that you will develop this plan through a very human-centered approach and community-centered approach. And like Ayush was saying, not necessarily through problem-solving design lens all the time, but like thinking about what's happening out there in the world and relating that back to your vision and whatever project you're working on. I would say that, I mean, I'm sure there are egoistic individuals everywhere or egoistic academic plans everywhere, because you have your own dreams and you only have a certain limited amount of time and energy to do something. But in the network that I'm surrounded by, because I do a lot of public action or like entrepreneurship, people are collaborative, and that's the way you learn. We participate in crits. For example, if you have a project, then other people in the room will be asking you questions, or like will be critical of this project, and you have to, improve it and answer their questions over time. So yeah, I definitely think that the essence of the plan is for you to be a critical and driven individual within the landscape of the larger community. So you exist in a network, not alone.
That's a great answer. So we have just about 5 minutes left, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about I-20s and getting your visa. I know that the admissions office has been bombarded with questions about I-20 and visas. So what you need to know is that we will not begin processing your I-20 until you have enrolled and deposited at Bennington. So until we're sure that this is where you're coming, we cannot issue you an I-20, because the I-20 is unique to, it's tied to the college that you're going to be attending. So once you deposit, once you enroll and tell us that, yes, you're coming to Bennington, yay, you're going to have to submit to us a certification of finances. This is a document that you should have gotten an email about. It just pretty much attests that how much your family can pay based on the financial aid that you received. And it's a document that we need in order to issue your I-20. So until we receive your certification of finances, we cannot issue you an I-20. So if you have questions about that document, please email me, or please email Dory, or please email the financial aid office. Any of us can help you find that document. The document is online. If you go on our international landing page, bennington.edu/international, you're gonna find a link to the document right there. And if you have trouble finding it, just email me and I will link it to you. But it's very important that you understand that we need the certification of finances, and the more clear the information is on the certification of finances, the faster we're going to be able to process that I-20. The I-20 is a very complex document, and everything to the last detail needs to match your passport information. So we need we need you to spell out the information as clearly as you possibly can so that we can expedite that process. Once we have issued the I-20, we overnight it to you. So no matter where you are in the world, you're going to get it pretty much 1 or 2 days after we mail it to you. So the mailing process is really easy. It's really just going about issuing the document. Once you get your I-20, you can go ahead and set up an appointment to the consulate to get your visa. I think you need to pay attention to a couple different things. The first thing is that you cannot apply for a student visa before 120 days before your starting date. So the only window of time that you can apply for a visa for is within 120 days before the start date of your first semester of Bennington. So that's about 4 months. So I believe that at beginning of May, you're going to be able to start the visa process. The other thing that you want to pay attention to is that in order to get your visa at the consulate, you have to fill out the CVIS. And the CVIS requires that you pay a fee that is X amount of dollars, but you do have to pay that CVIS fee in order to be able to get your visa at the consulate. The CVIS fee is different from the visa fee, mind you, so you're going to have to pay the CVIS fee before you take the appointment at the consulate, and when you get to the consulate and submit your visa application, there's going to be a visa fee that you need to pay. So those are two different fees, and I just want you to be mindful of that, because in the past we've gotten questions and there was a little bit of confusion about the fees that students were supposed to pay. So I wanted to take this opportunity to spell that out for you. If you have any questions about your visa, feel free to email any of us in admissions that you've been in touch with, either me or Dory, that's fine, or Kate Child in Student Services, or John Workmeister in admissions, or the financial aid office. Yeah, the other thing is, if you had trouble hearing any part of this webinar, this whole thing was recorded. So if you want a recording of this 1 hour event, we can send that to you. So just shoot me an email and let me know that you want a recording of it, and I'm gonna send one to you. Other than that, I think we made good time. It's 9 a.m. right here. I'm pretty sure it's much later wherever you're connecting from. So we're gonna say good night or good evening, and I think that'll be it. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you for tuning in.
Yeah.
And shoot us emails if you have any other questions.
Yeah, any other questions, feel free to reach out to us.
Bye.
Bye.